Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab, where our goal is to have conversations that help empower healthy churches. We are super glad to have you here with us. And we're really glad for the conversation today that we're going to have with Jessica Bealer. Jessica has been leading a ministry for 22 years, including overseeing standards, systems, staffing, and atmosphere for the family ministry of Elevation Church, as well as overseeing the launch of 20 locations. Currently, she oversees ministry engagement at Generis, an organization dedicated to helping churches see their mission accomplished. She's married to Frank, the mother of 5. She's a published author, a multisite specialist, the host of Women's Leadership Workshop podcast. We're going to find out when she actually gets sleep and rest as we talk. But Jessica, it's great to have you here on the show. Yeah, appreciate it. Well, one thing we like to ask everyone, just as we kind of start the conversation, there's the public bio that you kind of put on the back of the book or the conference brochure, whatever it is. But there's always something that doesn't make that public bio that maybe all your friends and your family would know about you. So what is that for you?
Oh, okay. So I don't want to turn it into confession hour, but I am definitely like that mom at sporting events.
Okay.
I'm the one who is yelling at the referees and like full out, like, there's like a shot made and like I'm like the one standing up and screaming, and my son is like, calm down, down. I'm also a dance mom, which definitely fits my personality. You can hear me in all of her videos that we get from the different competitions that she's at. When she takes the stage, they announce it, and you can hear me like, "Come on, let's go, Layla!" Like you can hear me. So
That's awesome.
That
I like to imagine there's
the
group of referees sort of like have your picture up, like, "Hey, get like." Just so you know, like Jessica's in the crowd today. You got to be careful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, I'm so, because I still want to be Christ-like, but I'll say things like, "Oh, come on, Rick, you can do better."
That was my as I grew up playing sports, all that like commentary to the referee was the part that I probably failed at most. So I'm with you. I see that all too. I'm like, you're probably right most of the time. I'm pretty sure about that. Well, as we jump in, I know one of the kind of the big pictures we're going to cover and talk about is family ministry, kids ministry. What does that look like to have a really engaging, impactful ministry for families? I know you've been doing that for years and help a ton of churches with that. So as you kind of think about your years, both overseeing family ministry, but also coaching others, what are some of the common pitfalls that churches kind of fall into that you've seen over the years that actually end up maybe hurting or hindering the ministry?
Yeah, I would probably say first and foremost is just a lack of prioritization of healthy volunteer culture. I honestly think it's one of the biggest things that is affecting not just like KidMin and student ministry and family ministry, but just church growth overall. I feel like just this lack of like focus on that. I say all the time that it's not a priority unless you communicate it, but we are so like leery about communicating volunteerism from the stage because we're like, oh, we don't want to chase people away. We don't want to burn them out or whatever. But if you're not communicating it, it's not a priority of your church. And so it really does start from like how your church is communicating about volunteerism. But even beyond that, like then prioritizing a healthy volunteer culture. Healthy volunteer culture is clarity, it's appreciation, it's empowerment, it's leader development, it's acknowledgement, it's challenge, it's accountability. I mean, it's all of these things, but those things will not happen unless you focus on it, and you will not focus on it unless you prioritize it. So, I think this lack of just prioritization of healthy volunteer culture is probably one of our greatest downfalls as both
I think too
that but also
what I've seen in my time in ministry also is like sometimes that investment is reactionary. So it's like, hey, we have this many volunteers who are bailing, who are like, hey, I'm burnt out, I'm tired, or whatever. And it's like, okay, we should probably do something versus like you're saying, prioritizing it and being like, no, these are These are like, will not move from the calendar, things we're doing to pour in, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. A lot of times we will get on to the stage, or we'll communicate it from social media or whatever it may be. We make some kind of announcement, and if you have a program or something like that. And the
Yeah.
reason that we're doing that is because the ship is sinking.
Right.
But like
Right.
nobody's climbing on the Titanic when it's going down, you know? I mean, like people want to be a part of a winning team. And so if you're only communicating when you're desperate, your communication is going to be just that. It's going to be, we really, really need you all back there. We can't open the doors if we don't have people, or our church is growing like crazy, but we're not able to minister. Like, well, nobody wants to be a part of that. People want to be a part of a program, an organization, a
Yeah.
ministry that is, hey, we're back there changing lives. Like, this is incredible, and this is what's happening right now. So I feel like that even the
Yeah.
way that we communicate it is
Yeah.
important, but also when we
That's
communicate
massive.
it when you're
That's massive
winning,
because
not
that's,
just when you're
yeah,
losing.
most of the time it is. Man, we're in desperation mode. Better make time for this in the announcements. And that's how it goes. So that's huge. Yeah. Well, what are some of the things
For
like
sure.
I know that
For sure.
across the board, ministries have changed, church has changed post COVID. I think that's a reality everybody's aware of. But in particular, like in kids ministry, in family ministry, all like, how have you seen, like what are some of those changes that you've seen post COVID that churches might be kind of dealing with now?
Yeah, there's this one significant change, and I feel like it's actually for the better, and it's really exciting to me. And it is just simply that we have reverted back to highly relational ministry,
Yeah.
both with our volunteers, which we were just talking about, but also with the families that we serve. We have a mental health crisis right now going on in the country. We have people who have battled for years with isolation, and in many instances, just like there was lots of divorce going in there, so maybe even dealing with
Yep.
rejection. The way that we overcome those hurdles is through relationship. And so, I'm not bashing at all. I mean, I was part of Elevation, which is super like edgy and very like culturally relevant and all that. So I'm not bashing that. But I do think that we've kind of almost come to an end of just like, okay, I'm going to attend the flashiest, the most beautiful environment church of,
Mm.
like the thing that offers me the most. I think we've kind of come to an end of that. And this is really more about like, where do I fit? Where do I find my tribe? Where are the people that know my name? And so I think it's really exciting because this provides opportunities for smaller churches, for churches that don't have
Yeah.
the massive budgets, that can't pull off these massive Easter productions, that kind of thing. And so I think that this is a really exciting time because this just kind of like opened the floodgates for all churches to now make a greater impact in their community. So I think just the refocus back onto relationships is really crucial. I remember in the middle of COVID, I had a conversation with Carrie Newhoff, who's very close to my family, my husband's best friend, and he made this statement. He said, "From
That's
this
really
point
good.
forward, no one should out local the local church." And I thought it was brilliant. I was like, exactly. For far too long, we've let organizations or schools play the role of what the local church should be. But right now, no one should outlocal the local church. We should be absolutely for our local communities in whatever way that means. And every community is different. The needs are different. But it really does mean that every church now has an opportunity because relationships,
Yeah.
I'm not saying relationships
Well,
are
and
easy, but they're
like I think of that
doable
too,
for
like
everyone.
you might look at a church like Elevation or whatever, insert that church. It could be a large church just in somebody's community. And you kind of look at it as like, okay, we need to do that and we need to kind of mimic that. And there's some really great things to do and to see all of that. I'm not saying that at all. But
Right.
I think it's realizing that there is actually unique value that you can offer. And there's unique value that a church of 200 can offer that a church of 2,000 can't. and leaning into that and sort of embracing that. And, it's almost
Absolutely.
like a security to be who you are, and who God has called you to be, rather than, how do we become, something that we're not. So
Absolutely. We could always be more efficient and effective as ministries. And I think that's where we learn
yep.
from each other the most is what systems do you have that's working for you? What are some best practices that you do? But trying to replicate, I think that that's always not the best idea. I think the best idea is, like you said, just to be who God has called you to be and serve your community exactly where they are. And just through the lens of relationship, how can we create more relationships? And I wonder if that was the question that we started with. So, like, for example, if you're working on your first time guest processes, your first time guest experience, instead of saying, what can we do to wow them? Or what is that church over there doing that's just incredible? I wonder if the question
Yeah.
was, how can we create relationship from the first conversation? I wonder how
Yeah.
that would
And I think
change
that's
like
a
the
great
systems
example
that we
too of
build
like
and the
taking something
processes
that
that we
we've
build.
learned from from the change from where we're at right now, and like bringing it upstream, so that it's not just sort of like, well, we need to have a live stream, so let's have a live stream. But it's like, how do we let this change and alter the
Right.
very decisions that we're making in what we do and how we do it? I think that that's super important. And really, um, yeah, I think a lot of our conversation spans beyond just kids and family ministry into just ministry. So that's
For sure.
great.
It does.
Well, one
It
of the
does.
things that I
Yeah.
know
Right.
is really important, specifically to kids and family ministry, is ensuring there's all sorts of things like we want it to be engaging, we want it to all that stuff, but certainly ensuring that's a safe environment for kids is essential. So, like, what are some
Absolutely.
things we talked about before with volunteers being proactive and reactive? Excuse me. Obviously, there's kind of both that need to happen when it comes to safety. So, what have you seen the ways that like churches can be preventative but also proactive in how they are equipping volunteers, but also just kind of providing that safe environment at the church?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would just say is that you have to be proactive in the way that you communicate this value. So you can't assume that parents are looking for your safety and security protocols. They're not. They're expecting to know, like almost know them. It's one of these things. It's like, why don't you read my mind? No, that you have to make sure that you're communicating it. So it has to be out there. So we know just from, like research, we know that when people are checking out a church, they typically will go to Instagram or they'll go to the landing page of the church. And if they have kids and families, they will go straight to the children's ministry or student ministry. And most of church websites do not discuss, other than the words, a safe and secure environment. They do not actually discuss what they're doing to create this safe and secure environment. So I think it's really important that number one, we prioritize the communication of it, that you put it out on social media, that you put it on your webpage, that all of your volunteers know what to say. My volunteer role at the church right now is the first time guest liaison. So like they come in and they meet me, and I have this incredible opportunity to introduce them to my church's name is Local Church. So introduce them to local church and the local church kids ministry, which is really exciting. And I find points in there to just reiterate some of the safety and security protocols that we have. So I, make sure that I express that between every service that we are sterilized and still cleaning, even
Yeah.
though COVID is, a thing of the past now. At least we're believing it is. Even though it's kind of we're on the other side of it now. It's still important that parents know that. The other thing that I always tell them is when we're walking out, I will say, I'm walking out right now, but these doors are going to go into lockdown in about 5 minutes. So as soon as that church starts, this is in lockdown and your child is safe and secure. They're not even expecting me to say that. They're just expecting me to be kind and friendly and show them where their kids' class is at. But I think it's really important that we're proactive. So I think the first thing is that we are proactive with our communication. I think the second thing that I would say is that it's not enough to do like a quarterly training or an every 6 month training on safety
Yeah.
and security protocols, because things are changing all the time. There's new
It's wild.
technology out, especially right now with
Yeah.
AI. I mean, oh my gosh, like computers are smarter than we are. It is. And I expect that we're going to see even the advance, I know this is a sad reality, but even the advancements of those who intend harm, it's going to be so much faster because of artificial intelligence. So things are always changing right now. So I would probably suggest that you have a safety or a security coach. And what I mean is that person is not on a roster. They are not in a classroom, and they're not on the security team, because the security team or the safety team, whatever you want to call them, they definitely have a role, a very, very important role. But I also think that if you put this coach on that team, then they move into the realm of just making sure that they are eliminating any type of risks or any individuals that would want to harm someone in your ministry. The idea, the role of this player, this person, would be to simply coach. So to just be in the room, and when a volunteer say, they don't shut the door,
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
have a person that is very good with communicating, is warm and friendly, and say, hey, just for security purposes, we got to make sure that this door is closed. Or, oh, hey, just remember our bathroom policy requires that 2 adults go at every time. So I'll walk down there with you just to make sure. But the next time we need to make sure that we have 2 people that are walking down to the bathroom. So I think that's probably what I would recommend, is having a safety and security coach that is literally there on site, making sure that the things that you have in your volunteer handbook are not only followed, but that your volunteers are actually being coached on how to be better at safety and security. So I think that's the second thing. The third thing that I would say, and this will be quick, is that your security should be visible. There's people out there who would say, oh, you should have some plainclothes officers or some plainclothes security. And I'm not opposed to that. That's completely fine. But when you walk into your child's school, you expect to see security. When you walk into the mall, you expect to see security. When you walk into a church, it is now an expectation that there will be security there.
Yep.
And if a parent is not seeing security, they're going to assume you don't have any. So it is very important that there is a visible security presence, whether that means they're actually police officers or it's a security team. It needs to be a visible presence, and that means they need to be identifiable. So they need to have a lanyard, a T-shirt, a jacket, something that identifies them as security. So be proactive in your communication. I would probably suggest that you have a coach that makes sure that you're getting better at safety security on an ongoing, consistent basis, and then make sure that your security officers, whatever that may be, whether it be a team or an
I kind
officer,
of
that they
chuckled
are
when
very
you
present
talked about
and visible.
the church website, and like most church websites are like, you go to the kids ministry, and the same thing. I've done that when looking for a church. It's like one of the more highly viewed pages, but typically you go and it's like a
Right.
safe and secure environment. On to the next thing. So that's super. I think that's super accurate. I guess what I would
Exactly.
ask is, what would you say to people then who are like, who just heard that and like, yeah, that's definitely our website, but we should change that. Like, what are some of those things they could do? Because I do think,
Right.
like what we've talked about, like the process starts even before a family arrives in kind of communicating that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just bullet pointed out. You don't need to write
Yep.
not a lot of paragraphs. People don't read paragraphs; they do read bullet points. So I would probably, if you have that language in there, safe and secure environment, I would probably just bullet point it out, and I would say that every classroom, every ministry area is clean and sterilized in between each service. That we do have visible security. That we go into lockdown. We do have a safety and security coach that is making us better every single week. So just bullet point it out so that they can actually see and know what it is that
Yeah.
that you're actually doing, not just saying that it's a safe and secure environment. Because here's
Yeah.
the thing, we've been saying that for 30 years, like those same things, but it means something different on the other side of COVID. It means something different on the
Yep.
other side of this massive trend of school shootings. Like, it means something different. Safety and security means
Yeah.
something different
Yeah.
now than
And
it did 20 or 30
unfortunately,
years
I
ago,
mean,
but our
sadly, the
language hasn't
environments that
changed.
at one time we could probably look at and say, this is where our kids are. And it's, sort of off limits, or what, like we just don't live in that world anymore. And so, yeah, I think as we're looking to really love and engage
No,
people and
no,
connect
we
with
don't.
people, assuring them that we understand that, like, we know the world that we live in, we know the reality of it, and here's what we do to protect against that is really important.
An interesting thing that happened in my own personal, just like ministry journey. When my dad's a church planner, and he sent me to a couple of the churches to learn in the very beginning. And I'm not going to call them out, but I went to a very large, well-known church to look at their children's ministry environments. And I remember being blown away. I mean, it was just gorgeous, and it was all glass, and it was just so beautiful. And I was thinking, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like, this is incredible. This is the pinnacle of children's ministry. Um, and just kind of ironically, a couple of years ago, this church actually called me out, and I got to do some
Yeah.
coaching with the church that I had looked at 20 years ago when I was learning, how to do children's ministry. And I went to the same building, which had a couple of modifications, but honestly hadn't had that much. I mean, other than just like, making sure that it was refreshed every few years. And looking at it from a different perspective, almost 2 decades later, I
Wow.
realized how insecure this environment was. 29 entrances. It was beautiful, all glass. 29 entrances. And I remember looking and saying to their children's pastor, you can't
Wow.
secure your building. Like, there's no way to you have 29 entrances. There's no way for you to secure your building. So what was the pinnacle of children's ministry 20 years ago would now be unacceptable. And if you haven't changed your processes and your procedures in that amount of time, or your environments in that amount of time, it probably means that you're
Yeah.
not relevant,
Yeah. So you should take it off
and
your
that your
website.
kids probably are not safe and secure.
Yeah. No, that's a really good
Right.
call, and something just, yeah, we have to stay on top of. I mean, I wish we didn't, but like, that's not the world we live in. So, well,
I know.
I think when it
Right.
comes to
Exactly.
leading any ministry, especially family, kids, next gen ministry, um, especially when you think of a smaller church, smaller staff, like, it can be overwhelming, um, either to think about all the opportunities of what you can do, to think about the work that needs to be done, all of that. So if there are any leaders listening to this who feel that maybe they're new, they're just stepping into the position, what are some things, what's some advice that you could offer, maybe some secret weapons you've learned over the years, for people getting started, for people looking to grow and improve their ministry, that sort of thing?
So yeah, I'll give probably a couple pieces of advice, but the first one, and this is
Mm.
kind of the overarching principle, is that you have to be a learner all the time. And it doesn't matter if you've been in ministry for 5 minutes or 25 years, you have to still be constantly learning. I will often joke with my coaching clients. I'll often say something like, um, I thought I knew everything when I became a coach, and then realized very quickly that I knew nothing about ministry. I have
Wow.
learned so much more in coaching ministry than I ever knew prior to this. And I had a lot of experience prior to coaching. But I think when you have an open mind and an open heart, and you are willing to learn, then I
Mm.
think that's helpful. But I also think that you have to be proactive in your learning, because showing up and being a hard worker, and even if you have a willingness to learn, you may learn a few things from those around you that are in your current role, but you really kind of have to step out of your current environment, and actually go and seek out
Mm.
other influences to actually be able to grow and learn at a different level. And so I would say, go check out other churches. Just call them ahead of time and
Right.
say, hey, can I just walk through your ministry? It does not mean that you need to be like that other church or that other ministry. It just simply means that, hey, maybe there's one thing that you can garner from that experience, and you can take it back. Elevation has a
Yeah.
code. It's like the 10 things that they're like biblically based principles, and one of their principles is, we eat the fish and leave the bones. And essentially what it's saying
Yeah.
is that we can learn from anybody. It doesn't mean that we have to take it and internalize everything, but we can learn from anybody. We can learn from secular companies. We can learn from other organizations. And so just being willing to learn, and not only just the willingness, but also the proactiveness to then seek out new experiences, new information. I think that's important. So go to conferences, read books, obviously, but honestly, a lot of times by the time we're reading
Yeah.
a book, it's that information was written a couple of years prior to that, and it isn't always the most relevant. Maybe some leadership principles or best practices, but it's really about seeking out other churches. So if you're a smaller church and like, where do I
Mm.
start? What's the church that is creating waves in your community? Who are those people? Just go, call the children's director and say, hey, can I get a guest pass and just come and sit and watch? Would that be okay? Most of them are going to be like welcoming to that, and it'll honestly be a
Yeah.
compliment to them, and they're going to be exciting that they're able to help another church. So I would probably say that. The other thing that I would say is that you need a coach, whether it's me or somebody else. I feel like you always need a coach in life. I have my own coach. I actually have two. I have like a mommy coach, who is someone who is a friend, but she's a few years ahead of me, and her kids are the same ages as my kids. And then I also have a business coach as well, and it's like business
Yeah.
slash ministry because I'm in a like a parachurch field, and so I have a business ministry coach as well. And so I know without a shadow of a doubt that I would not be where I was if I did not have a coach. So I think everybody needs to have a coach or a mentor. So everybody has to have a Paul and everybody has to
Yeah.
have a Timothy. And so
That's
whatever
super
that looks
helpful.
like
I
for
think
you,
that
I think
often
you
gets
need to seek
overlooked
that
too,
out.
because there's a lot to do, and there's a lot, and it's one of those things that it may not be urgent, but it's extremely important. And so it's that thing that has to be on the calendar, that can't be bumped, that can't be
Very.
moved, because it's going to sustain, it's going to actually fuel all the things that have to do that, you may be tempted to just get done and cancel the coaching call, or, whatever it might be. So
Well, and it will create momentum and excitement, and that in and of itself will hold off burnout, because burnout happens when you're exhausted and you don't have new ideas, and you are just at the end of your rope and you don't feel like you have help.
yeah,
But when you're learning something, it kind of like you said, like it fuels that fire. You get excited about it. You have new ideas, fresh insight,
yeah,
and
that's really
so
good.
it can kind of keep the
Well, one
burnout
thing
at bay
that
as well.
that we love to hear all of our guests share is what they feel is one essential component of a healthy church. So, what would you say to that?
One essential component. Um, if I hadn't have
That
already
could be
talked about healthy
one. You could
volunteer
do like
culture, I would
you
have.
could do
I
like
would say
one
that.
B.
I will. Yeah, yeah. I think that it's really important that you have layered leadership within your church. I think that is absolutely crucial, and that kind of does play into the healthy volunteer culture too, because a healthy volunteer culture will be raising up leaders. But I do think that every church has to have a layered leadership model. And what do I mean by that? I simply mean that you should have lay leaders in positions of authority inside your church, in all the different areas, kidmin and student ministry, of course, but in all the different areas of your church, you should have layered leadership. The reason is because there's no way for one or two staff members to care for and hold accountable all of the volunteers. There's no way for them to serve the families alone, and so it's absolutely crucial that you have layers of leadership that are not only supporting your volunteer teams, but are also reaching out and connecting with families too. Just it's essentially a multiplication factor when you do that. And so I think I would say layer leadership. And if you're a small church and you're listening to this, it doesn't mean I'm not saying, I know you may have 25 kids and you're like, well, I have, people that kind of lead my classrooms. And I understand that. I'm not saying that you need to now put in, like you have the staff member and then a coordinator and a team leader, you have 25 kids. But it does mean that there should be someone in between you and your volunteer base. And that is both to protect your mental health and your um, ability to do what God has called
Yeah.
you to do. But it's better for the volunteers as well, because they have somebody that they can call. A lot of times volunteers and even families that you're serving, they don't want to call the ministry leader because they're afraid, oh, they're so busy, so I just won't make the call. And then you lose a volunteer or you lose a family because they just didn't feel connected. When you have those layers of leadership, it enables you to better serve the families, but it also enables you to better serve the volunteers as well. So I think layering your leadership, and
Yeah.
again, I think that
Yeah. That's
probably
super
plays
well
hand in
said.
hand with having a healthy volunteer
Well,
culture as well.
let's jump into our last little section. We do the final five, and we run through these rapid fire. And so we'll jump into him. What is one
Okay.
book you'd recommend to church leaders?
Oh, one book. Um, Oh my gosh, I have to pick one. Um, I think I'd probably say, I mean, if we're just talking like generally, I'd probably say lead small. I'm an absolute believer
Yeah.
in small groups because we just talked about relationships earlier, and that's where they happen. And so I think probably if I'm just picking one book, I'm going to say lead small because lead small leads to relationships, and relationships are where
Okay.
the
Awesome.
ministry really happens. So I'm
All right.
picking
What
one,
about the
I'd say lead
last
small.
thing that you listen to on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you listen to?
Okay, so I listen to Carrie Newhoff's podcast. I'm a huge, big fan, and so I listen to all these. I can't tell you the one. I don't always listen to them in order. It's really just pretty much what the ones that I that
Yeah.
interest me. They're kind of long. I mean, he'll tell you that his podcasts are so long. But yeah, I would say that it's great because it's content for everyone. Like you can garner something from each of them,
Yeah.
even if it's not in your ministry genre or whatever. So definitely a Carrie Newhoff podcast is one of the ones that
Nice.
I've listened to.
Nice.
I think I listened to it
What's
day
your
before
favorite
yesterday.
piece of
So
technology?
yeah, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, Evernote. I'm an Evernote girl. I have been sold out to Evernote for a really long time. It keeps me organized. I love it very much. I'll say that, and then I'll also tell you something else. That this is just an app that I'm a little fascinated with. It's not that it's like brand new. It's been out for
No,
a
I
few years
haven't.
now. But there's an app called Blinkist. Have you heard of this app, Blinkist? It's Blinkist. And it essentially takes books, leadership books, whatever, and it takes them into blinks. And each blink is like, it could be anywhere from 45 seconds to like a
Well,
minute.
that's awesome.
But you can read a book in like 17 minutes. And so, yeah, so I'm a little fascinated with it right now. But my favorite would be Evernote, but this technologies.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out. That's a great idea. Now with Blinkist, can you put is it the type of thing where you can like add a book, or are they pulling from books that already exist, that sort of thing?
They're just pulling from books that already exist. But I
Okay.
mean, you can request them to do a blink. So like that's something like if one of the books that you want to read is not on there yet, you can send in a request. And I think if you get a most, but the library is so big now. I hadn't ever read Purple Cow, and I wanted to read it. I've been saying I'm going to read it forever, but it's not like I'm not in marketing, and so I'm like, yeah, but I've been
Yeah,
wanting to read it, and I read it in like 7 minutes. I was like, this is fabulous. And
that is.
what I do is I will listen to it, and then I'll listen to it again the next day because it's almost so concise that it's throwing all of these like nuggets at you really fast, and so your brain can't like absorb them. So I will listen to it, and then the very next day I'll listen to it again.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll certainly link to that, but I'm going to check that out as well.
Yeah.
What is a quote or advice that stuck with you over the years?
My dad, so my dad's a preacher, and I literally just told this to my daughter yesterday. My dad once told me it's kind of the litmus test for communication. He said you should never speak unless it's true, necessary, and kind, and it has to be all three. It
Mm,
can't just be one. It has to be true, it has to be necessary, and it has to be kind. It can be true and necessary, but if you can't say in kindness, then you need to wait until you can. And so I was literally just telling my daughter this yesterday. I was like, was that true? Yes. Was it necessary? Yes, you absolutely needed to say it. You probably could have said it in a kinder way. And she was like, yeah, I agree.
mm.
But I think that's always my litmus test for when I am in a meeting. I will always say, is this true, necessary, kind? Like in my mind, I'm like, is it true? Yes. Necessary? Yes. Kind? Yes, I can say it like I'm in. Okay, now I'm going to say what I need to say. So I think that's just a good litmus test for all of us. And in the world that we are in, if we all just ran it through that filter, how much more peaceful would it be?
Seriously. Yes. I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
All right, last one. What is one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders?
We are about to go through a revival. I'm so excited
Mm,
about it. I work with churches all over the country. I think I have 15 churches that I'm coaching, and they are small size from 300 all the way up to I mean, I think 7 locations, one in Tampa, 7 locations, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And the one thing that I'm seeing is that we are breaking records, 2019 records. So we are breaking records like never before.
Awesome.
And honestly, we're right before Easter right now. And so most of the time, just if you look at these trends, we kind of start to go down, and then we hit Easter, and then we're down, down, down until it's like a ghost town in the summer. And then we pick back up in the fall. But that's not happening. We are breaking trends. And right now, churches across the nation are experiencing growth. And I believe come September, October, November, that we are going to see this massive revival and that people are going to flock to the church like never before. And I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to see it.
It's awesome. Yeah, may it be so. That's awesome. Well, I'd love for you to share with people where they can get in touch with you, connect with you, learn from you, perhaps even have a conversation about coaching. And just as people want to kind of follow along, where can they best do that?
Yep. So 2 ways. You could always reach out to me through social media. It's just Jessica Bealer, JESSICABEALER, and on all of the social medias, it's Jessica Bealer. I do have a Facebook. It's a closed Facebook group. It's called Mastering Ministry Workshop. You can request to be a part of that. I think I have about 2,500 people right now, and we just talk about ministry. So that's fun. But if you want to go directly to me, I'm just going to give you my email, and you can just email me. It's jessica.bealer@generis.com. So JESSICA.BEALER@Generis, GENERIS.com. And shoot me an email, and we can talk about coaching or anything else that you want to talk about.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link to all of that as well in the show notes. But Jessica, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for, I truly believe, helping a lot of churches in growing in kids ministry, family ministry, but really in what it looks like to lead, pour into volunteers, and hopefully, continue to grow a healthy church. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening, for watching. However you consume this, we appreciate it. You are invited to subscribe, to like, to leave a review, or to share this conversation with somebody maybe that came to mind that might find it helpful. We want more and more people to hear this because we want more and more conversations to help empower healthy churches. So we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.